to watch this, but welcome to my macro masterclass. I'm so excited to take this journey with you, walk you through everything. What I'm going to do is I will get the slideshow started. We're going to go through a little bit of information, and then at the end, I'm going to bring you through like the real world of actually how to do this, okay? So without further ado, our macros masterclass. What we're going to dive into is what are macros and why do they actually matter, how to eat anything you want and still burn body fat, because it is possible, how to heal your hormones with the right foods, and this is a big one, and then more importantly, the actual tactical of how to plan your week's meals in under 10 days and actually do macros in the real world, okay? So whether you're new to them, whether you're more experienced, I think this will be great, and you can take a lot of information from this presentation, okay? So what are macros and why do they actually matter? So let's break it down super simple. Macronutrients are the three nutrients that your body needs the most in large amounts, okay? Carbohydrates, protein, and fats. Macros for short, makes it simple. Everybody is going to need a different mix of carbs, protein, and fat for optimal health and body composition. And there's a ton of factors that come into play here, okay? So sex, whether you're male or female, your current body weight, your current body fat levels actually come into play a lot. Activity levels, how much we're moving, our actual current hormone health, these are all going to come into play, okay? And things like insulin sensitivity, like there's so many factors that determine what your particular mix is going to be. But at the end, I'll go through a really good way to get an initial baseline. But this is going to be like anything in life. You got to be a scientist. You got to test and iterate. Because even when I'm working with my clients, for the most part, I know what's going to work, but sometimes we do need to make tweaks along the way, okay? Because things will pop up and we're like, oh, you know what? Okay, I didn't realize this. Let's make this adjustment. So like, it's okay if it all doesn't happen on day one. And if this is very new to you, there's going to be some experimentation that comes along the way, but this is also going to give you a lot of power to be able to adjust things for yourself moving forward, okay? And drink lots of water too, because that's always good for you. But how can we actually eat anything and still burn body fat? So when we get our macro numbers dialed in, it makes it much easier to work in foods that we like rather than following like a traditional meal plan. So most of the people that I work with, I start with more of a strict, rigid meal plan so we can really get some weight off quickly. But then as we get further down the line, it comes into play a lot more of like lifestyle. How can we do this for the long term? Because we don't want to just lose weight and gain it back. This is something that we want to maintain for the rest of our lives. Okay. So in the initial stages, if fat loss and weight loss is still the main driver, food volume, like the actual amount of food that you're eating, we want high volume because it keeps us full and satiated. And then the actual food quality are definitely going to matter most. Okay. So think, for example, if we're looking at our carb intake and I have 20 grams of cupcakes, and I have 20 grams of sweet potatoes. I think that we can both agree that both of them are going to have a different effect on our hunger levels, on our blood sugar, and ultimately how the actual food is going to affect us. So macros matter, but they are not everything. Food quality is going to be more important when it comes to fat loss. Okay, so high food volume, high food quality are two of the most important things. And actually a really simple hack to get good food quality is think foods that are ingredients rather than foods that have ingredients. So example, carrots, potatoes, chicken, rice, water, all single ingredients. But when we start to look at cupcakes, cookies, prepackaged things, like it's a mix of ingredients. Usually the food quality is a lot lower and there's extra shit added in there. Okay. So just to streamline it, eat foods that are ingredients, not foods that have ingredients is always going to be the life hack that makes it easier. But when we start to factor in long-term sustainability, because that's really what this is about, it's best that we can work in foods that may not be the healthiest, but they make us the happiest. So an example of this is me and my wife on Saturday nights is like our free meal. So we might have a bottle of wine. We might order pizza with the kids, whatever. If it's Christmas Day, I'm probably going to have what my mom made, and it's totally fine. So there is times when we want to work those foods in, especially we know ourselves best. If you just love having that sweet treat in the evening, you can try to willpower yourself through never having it again, which is probably unlikely, and you're likely going to fail down the road and it will be bad. Or we can start to factor that in. So if it's like, okay, you know what? If I make like a Greek yogurt with chocolate chips, that's going to give me that sweet hit. Or maybe I use like some sugar-free jello, or like maybe I actually just have a fucking cookie if I can control myself. And all of that's totally fine and can be something that you can work in a lot easier when you focus on just your macros rather than just like kind of trying to eat intuitively, or even follow like a meal plan that like you don't know how to vary off of. Because if it's like a strict meal plan, which I do intentionally give you in the beginning, it's hard to add those things in, because like, where can I have a cookie? What if I did a muffin? Like, macro simplifies those things. Okay. When it comes to the hormone health side of things, this is primarily going to be with dietary fats, and it honestly often gets demonized as the wrong thing to eat and will make us fat. Even a lot of times when I start people off, I do go lower fat so that we can get a good initial weight loss before transitioning more into lifestyle, okay? And this really couldn't be further from the truth, though. And the main reason is because fats have the most calories of all the macronutrients. So proteins, carbs, they have 4 calories per gram, whereas fats have 9. So it's over double. So it's really easy to overeat on fats, which is why I usually give less in the beginning. And most of the foods that you eat will also have fat already naturally in them, okay? But the same can't be true for protein. But we'll get into that when I show you actually how to plan your days out, okay? So fat is the base building block for our sex hormones. So things like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. And when we're not getting the right amount of dietary fat in, you're going to start to experience hormonal imbalances, and those will affect your health. And in the context of body composition, it's really going to affect your ability to burn body fat, okay? So we want to eat dietary fat, and like this is a whole presentation on its own, but I always try to keep things simple and tactical. So like rather than break down each kind of polyunsaturated and monounsaturated and like go down that whole fucking rabbit hole, the right balance of fats is key. Avoid trans fats, so things that are like fried, junk foods, you get cookies, you get a bag of chips. Those things are all going to have trans fats. You want to avoid those the most. And then we want to keep things simple. And like I said, focus on foods that are ingredients. So things like olive oil, avocados, coconut oil, those are going to be more naturally occurring dietary fats that are good for us. And if we're focusing more on omega-3, which we should, things like fish, especially like salmon, fattier fish, those things will come into play and are good, healthy focuses. But those single ingredient fat sources are going to be the best ones for us. And sometimes we just need to eat a little bit more fat to help get that hormone health. So if your hormones have been out of whack for a long time, you probably need to increase your dietary fat. And this is going to be especially true if you're overweight, because the more overweight we are and the more body fat we have, the less insulin sensitive we are. So the less carbohydrates we need to eat, and that energy source has to come from somewhere, and it will typically come from dietary fat instead, okay? So how do we actually do this? What does it look like in the real world? And can we plan our week in under 10 minutes? And the answer is yes, you absolutely can. Honestly, with this, a lot of the legwork is going to be done ahead of time. And this will make it a snap when we actually like plan and prep in the future, because this is a skill and it does get simpler. And the longer you do this, the more you actually understand the food quality and what makes up each individual food. And this makes it a lot easier to do moving forward, because you kind of know, you're like, okay, 100 grams of chicken has about this much protein, but you don't know that until you start to kind of track and measure everything. Okay. So it's a cool skill to learn along the way. And it's just going to give you more information for better health. And usually the biggest challenge when it comes to macros is when we try to do it by the seat of our pants. So what I mean by that is, like, if I just wake up today and I start eating and I start tracking things to hit my numbers, what's going to happen every single time is you're going to get to the last meal of the day and you're going to eat a crazy fucking concoction of foods because you have all these weird amounts left. You have no protein left, or you've eaten all your carbs and you have just like a little bit of extra fats, and like you have to eat all this weird stuff to end up balancing your numbers. So what I definitely recommend 100% of the time, especially in the beginning, is that you pre-plan your day before. So example, I would go in tonight and I would put all of the food that I plan on having tomorrow. I want to be prepped and prepared anyways, so I should have it ready, and I hit my numbers that way. And then literally all I have to do the next day is just wake up and eat my food. Makes it way simpler. I don't have to think about it as the day goes. I just do that little bit of forethought ahead of time, and it honestly makes it way simpler. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you over to the app that I use, and I'm going to walk you through actually planning it out and how I would set it up for myself, okay? And the one I am going to use is going to be MyFitnessPal. If you've never used this one before, I find it to be the best macro tracker out there. But literally all you do, go and set up account. You don't need the paid version. You can do it if you want, but you definitely don't need it. You will simply go to goals. And when you're losing weight, a good way to start, and this is all relative, remember, because there's other things that can factor into this. But if we take our current weight and times it by 0.9 or 0.10, or 10, not 0.9. If we take our current weight and times it by 9 or 10, that gives us a good initial calorie goal. So let's say for easy math sake that I'm 200 pounds, I want to lose weight. I'm going to come in, I'm going to edit my nutrition goals, and I'm going to set my calories at 2,000. Okay, current weight times 10. If you're 150 pounds, you'd put in 1,500. If you're 300 pounds, you'd put in 3,000. Okay, easy math, times 10. Then we're going to come down and we're going to do our protein number. We want this to be 1 gram per pound of body weight. So again, I'm 200 pounds. I picked this number for a reason because it's easy math on the fly. So I want my protein to be at 200 grams. Let's say if this gave me a different number initially, I would literally just go in and I would adjust the percentages. If we're off by 3 grams, I wouldn't worry about it. So like if you're at 40% here and this is showing you 197, like who fucking cares? It's close enough. It's fine. Don't stress about it. So that's how we're going to do our protein number. Okay. So we have our calories set times 10. Our protein is set times 1. And this is per pound of body weight. And now when it comes to the carbs and fats, this is usually where there's more personal variance. And a couple things will come into play here. So the more overweight you are, the higher your percentage of fats is going to be. Usually the leaner we are more insulin sensitive, so we can handle glucose that comes from carb sources, fruits, potatoes, like anything like that. We're going to be able to handle it a lot better, okay? So we can eat more carbs, but in the beginning, if I was more overweight, I would probably set this in the 20 to 25% range, and then I would put the remainder in fats. If I was a little bit leaner, I would probably put this in the 35 to 40% range. So it really is going to go based on how lean you are. You know yourself best and just adjust the numbers accordingly for that. Okay. But this is always something that this will change more. These two numbers will change more as we go through things. Okay. So I'm going to, like, I would save my changes, but obviously I'm not changing mine. And then I can go back to my home. So now we get into actually planning our day. So I'm going to come into my foods. And this is actually much easier on your phone, okay? And then we'll go to food diary. And literally all we're going to do here is just log things that we eat, especially in the beginning. Like I said, pre-planning your day is going to be key. But if we look at the bottom here, it's giving me all of my goals. So not only do I have my calorie goal, I have my carb goal, I have my fat goal, and I have my protein goal. And as I start to punch things in, it gives me the breakdown for each food, okay? And it tells me how much I have remaining. So a really easy way to do this is think of how many times a day you want to eat. So example, if I'm going to eat 3 times plus a snack, I'm going to have 4 meals. If I need to get 200 grams of protein, a really easy way to do this would be to get all 4 meals at about 50 grams of protein. Doesn't have to go that way. It's just usually a bit easier to balance. When we're pre-planning things, one thing to keep in mind is that we want to hit our protein number first, then our carb number, and then we finish with our fat number, because there are a lot of foods that are just fats and don't have any protein or carbs in them. So it's a lot easier to balance it at the end rather than doing it vice versa. Okay. And let me say that again. We want to hit our carbs number first, then our protein number, then our fats. That's the right order, because carbs sources will usually have protein and fats in them. Protein sources will usually have fat in it, but fat-only sources are just fat. So it just makes it a lot easier to balance, okay, when you're pre-planning things. And to make things simpler moving forward is, as I put something in, I put this in as an example. 1 scoop of protein powder with a banana, I blend it and have a shake. That's a breakfast that I love. I have it every day. So rather than always having to put this in, and I would also, if you can, I would recommend tracking things a little bit more accurate than just 1 medium banana, because sizes can be different. But if that's how we're doing it, that's how we're doing it, okay? And then literally what you would do is you would go to quick tools and you would go to remember meal, okay? And then you can give it a name and save it. And this makes it easier moving forward to add this. So I've already gone ahead and done that. So I can show you now. So let's say now I'm having lunch. I want to make things a little bit easier. So rather than having to search through and pick the foods again, I just go to my meals and you'll see I have a bunch saved in here and I already have that protein and banana meal. Selected, so I can add it, boom, done for me. So I literally just did my lunch in 5 seconds because I've already pre-planned it. So literally all you would have to do is go in and put all of your foods in here. So let me take some of this stuff out. And the easiest way usually is if you have 2 or 3 breakfasts that you love, 2 or 3 lunches that you love, 2 or 3 dinners that you love, and 2 or 3 snacks that you love, and you have them preset as meals. So it just makes it easier. And then when you do your actual meal prep, you just need to make those foods. So example, if mostly my wife does our meal prep, which is great. But if it was me, I know I would make a lot of chicken. I would make a lot of turkey. I would make a bunch of rice, and I would make a bunch of potatoes because those are usually like the 4 staples that our things are based off of. And then I'm going to make sure that I have a bunch of Greek yogurt on hand and a bunch of fruit. And that's going to be the basis for my plan because that's what I like to enjoy the most, right? So I can just build all of my meals around that. So example, I'll show you this. I've already pre-planned meals. So I did the work ahead of time. Oops, sorry. But I'll go into my meals. And let's say that I picked my breakfast. Going to add that in. This is one that I often eat. So 10 grams of butter, 4 slices of bacon, 3 eggs. Done. Okay. And you'll notice that this is a higher fat meal. There's no carbs. So for myself, I usually like to save my carbs for the evening because I know I have more of a sweet tooth. So this is intentional. Okay. Protein's at 28 grams. So it gives me what's the remainder. I'm going to go in and I'm going to go to my meals again. I'm going to go to lunch. And I'm going to add that one. Perfect. So for a typical lunch would be 100 grams of avocado, 185 grams of ground beef, pineapple on the side, and again, butter. So this one, I'm starting to eat a little bit of carbs, a little bit more protein. But if I'm looking down here, I still know how much I have left. Okay. Now we'll go to dinner. I'm going to punch in my meals. I'll go to new dinner. And this dinner is going to be sausage. I love sausage. I'm having blueberries for a little bit of fruit, and I'm having a little bit of chicken as well because I want to have a little bit more protein in this meal, okay? And now typically what I would do as snacks is I usually like to have 2 shakes a day. Couple things on here. You can search by food. As you start to search things, you're going to have a frequent or a recent list, which makes it easier to add things. This is the brand of protein I'm using. I typically have 2 scoops, right? So my quantity is 2. I can go ahead and add that into my meal plan. And it's going to give me this. And now if I'm looking here, a couple things to note, okay? This is going to show me that my dietary fats are actually a little bit too high. My protein's a little bit low. And my carbs are a little bit low. So those are the foods that I have to play with. And this is why it makes it easier to do it ahead of time, right? Because if this was the end of the day and I put this in, I'm like, fuck, I'm already over here. And now I just got to get some protein and carbs. This is going to make it really hard to balance this out, right? But now that I'm doing it after the fact, it makes it a lot easier. So what can I do instead, okay? You know what? Instead of bacon for breakfast, let me take that out because there was a lot of fat there. And now I have a little bit more to play with, right? My fats are pretty close. I need a little bit more protein and I need a little bit more carbs. So what's one of my high protein foods? Okay, I can come into this chicken here and let me adjust this. So instead of 25 grams, let me go with 75 grams. Okay, so now I'm even with my fats. My proteins are closer and my carbs need to come up a little bit. But remember what I said, you want to ideally hit your carb number first. So I'm going to come in here and let's say, for instance, if I wanted to have a rice cake, this is when I can search. I'm going to have a caramel rice cake. That sounds good. We like those ones and we keep those at home. I'm going to add this to my food diary. And that gave me 12 grams of carbs, no fat, and 1 grams of protein. So you know what? This one's actually pretty good. So let's say that I actually wanted to have 4 because maybe I'll have 2 with my morning shake and I'll have 2 with my evening shake. Now all of a sudden, okay, I'm getting a little closer. I still need 22 grams of carbs, need a little bit more protein, and I still need a little bit less fat. So what can I do? I'm going to go back and look at my foods again. Ground beef is pretty high fat. to protein ratio compared to the chicken. So let me just adjust those proteins. I'm going to go in and maybe I'm only going to have 175 grams of beef instead. My fats need to come down a little bit more still. So I can go back in there. Whoops, where was my beef? There it is. And I'll go with 160 grams. Okay, fats are even again. I need a little bit more protein still though. So let's go in here to our chicken. I need 12 grams, so I got to go up to about 105. And as you do this more, honestly, it just gets easier. And this is so blocky because this is like would be me doing it for the first time, right? So it takes a little bit longer in the beginning. So my protein has to come up a little bit still by another 8 grams. So we're going to bring our chicken up. But after you have your numbers dialed in, when I go to repeat this day, it makes it way easier, right? So I need 2 more grams of protein, but since things are getting close, I want to hit my carb number first. And if we look at what's one of my high carb foods, okay, pineapple is pretty high carb. So I'm actually going to add more. Let's bring that up to 300 grams. I still need a little bit more carbs here. Okay, so I can probably double the amount of blueberries that I'm eating. And the longer you do this as well, the more you're going to get an idea of like how much actual food that pertains to, like how much food is 300 grams of pineapple. In your mind right now, you probably have no idea. And you're probably really either over or underestimating how much it is. But honestly, it's like a big bowl. It's really not that much. And that's the cool thing about doing this is that you start to learn. And if I'm in a fat loss phase right now, so everything has to come down by 1 gram, but I'm getting pretty darn close, okay? So let's make a couple micro adjustments here. Let's say that if we shave this one down by maybe 10 grams. And this is why it's so much easier as well to do it ahead of time. Because like think if I'd already been into my day and now I'm trying to go and balance all this out, like it's going to be a friggin' nightmare to balance this after the fact, right? And you could also argue that being 1 gram off is no big deal, especially in the beginning. But when I'm doing it and I'm following my macros pretty religiously, I like to have everything pretty dialed into the T. So I don't really like to be off. So I would just rather take the couple minutes and just balance things to the gram, okay? So now I still have 1 gram of protein and I got to come down by 1 gram of fat. It's starting to get a little bit annoying, but that is okay. But I'm going to show you something here. So this should be 130. That should give me enough protein. Oh, I'm a little bit over again, but that's perfect because I'm going to bring this down a touch. I want to purposely get where I just have fats left, and I want to show you what. Okay, so perfect. So here's a prime example. Oh, sorry. Say this was reversed, just for argument's sake, okay? If this was at 77 grams of fat, and I just need to go up by 1. A really easy way to do that is to focus on single ingredient oils. So example, olive oil. And a really way to do it is that 1 gram equals 1 gram. So 1 gram of olive oil is 1 gram of fat. It makes it way easier to track things. And you'll usually want to look for ways that you can track it by a gram because it makes it a lot easier because you'll see this will go up by 1 gram now. So see how it's 2? So 1 gram of fat, of a single ingredient fat like avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil, 1 gram is going to equal 1 gram of fat. It makes it a lot easier to balance. But that is literally how I would go in and pre-plan my day. And what did that take? It took us a few minutes. But when you have those meals pre-planned, it makes it way easier to do in the future. And if I liked this day, I would literally just go in and I would remember meal and I would save it. And this would be favorite snack 1. Save it in there. So then when I go to my next day, sorry, I don't want to click on ads here. I'm planning my next day's meal. I can just go to add foods. I'm going to go to my meals. And here's that new favorite snack number 1 that I added in. So now because I've done all the work ahead of time, I can go in and add that perfect snack and it already populates it all for me. So I can literally just do the entire day again in 10 seconds. So I hope you see that after that initial work, of like getting all your meals in, learning the tracker, starting to track. Like the first 1 to 2 weeks is going to feel clunky. Like I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to feel clunky. It did the same thing for me. But the longer you go into it, the more it gets streamlined, the more you start to learn your foods, you start to learn your particular numbers. I recommend weighing yourself every week so you can track your progress as well, and you start to play with these things. So let's say that I have my 2,000 calories, my 200 grams of protein. All of my goals are set for me. Let's go back to the goals, but I'm still not losing. I can do one of two things. One is I can drop my calories, and the other is I can start to play with my macros. If I know that calorically I'm probably feeling pretty good, first thing I would do is drop my carbs by 5% and increase my fats by 5%. Leave that for a week. If it's still not dropping, then I would start to drop my calories by 100 and just kind of keep iterating on that process. So like shave my carbs down a little bit, shave my calories down a little bit, shave my carbs down a little bit, shave my calories down a little bit. And remember, this is especially more true the more overweight you are. The leaner you are, usually it's more of a calorie thing, to be honest with you. Sometimes it's more of a movement thing. But this is my macro masterclass. I hope you got some amazing takeaways of exactly how to plan it out for yourself. And I don't have any more slides for you, but I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope I hope you have yourself a beautiful day. I'm tongue tied now. I got through it all without messing up, and now I am. And if you have any questions, as always, just message. I'm happy to help you dial in yours specifically. Okay.